But let me give you a very quick synopsis of what I think the whole Epstein thing is about. And I know you've gone down this rabbit hole, and let's see what you think. My guess is based on the fact that he had his money in Israel, that he was close to Ehud Barak, that Les Wexner was a huge patron of Israel and a supporter of Israel. My guess is that in one way or another, he was connected to Mossad. He was connected to the Israeli government. That the idea behind Epstein Island was get powerful people, including ex-presidents of the United States, to this island in a compromising position so that we have some kind of leverage. It does seem he had something over Wexner. How you give somebody full access, essentially, to your $4 billion fortune after knowing them for 2 years makes zero sense unless you got video of them with like somebody underage or something crazy. And so it does seem like this was a honeypot. This was some kind of an operation that Mossad was running. And the problem with making that public is, and even finding a paper trail or a digital trail, is that it would then show that the Israeli government not only has influence over our government, but also was putting ex-presidents and leaders of industry in compromising positions, leaders of industry specifically from the United States, like Bill Gates. And that would be a disaster for them from a public relations standpoint. So that's my assessment, and that's where it stands. Go.
Very plausible, Brian. Very plausible. I will just say I'm not yet ready to go there. I actually still believe, and by the way, I'm not ruling any of that out. I'm just trying to go where the evidence takes me. In the Wexner case, I cannot help but agree with you. I mean, I just think that the circumstances of giving full power of attorney over to somebody who you only started investing your money with some 3-4 years prior, and eventually transferring vast assets, putting this person in charge of your foundation through which they disperse millions of dollars, including to the former Israeli prime minister, is incredibly suspect as hell. But I mean, one of the things that I've really tried in the Tucker Carlson and Andrew Schultz appearance is to focus in on what we do know. And what we do know is that the source of Jeffrey Epstein's wealth remains a mystery to this day. Literally, while you and I are speaking, there are files inside of the United States government right now for suspicious activities reports filed by the large banks. Senator Ron Wyden, he is a Democrat, but whatever, don't care about that. Senator Ron Wyden is the chairman of the Financial Services Committee, has actually had him and Republican staff. By the way, if you're listening, I've been trying to get into contact with you. Please hit me up because I want to know what's in those. They were allowed to view those and to take handwritten notes. All of this still remains classified, showing some $1.5 billion in transactions that were coming in and out of the Epstein accounts. I believe that the money is the most important part of this story. I'm not yet sure if the honeypot actually was an intelligence operation, but I know almost for certain that the money itself was deeply intertwined with Israeli, with U.S., and with Saudi, and perhaps Russia, Chinese, other interests. I would take that to the bank. And the reason why is that the source of the wealth is both so not only mysterious, but unexplainable. You also have all of these multiple verified connections. And if you'll allow me just to go back like a little bit. So Jeffrey Epstein's first mentor in money laundering was a guy named Douglas Leese. Douglas Leese is a verified arms trafficker who was named in UK Parliament documents, so we know that he was specifically involved in these types of transactions. But more importantly, from that perspective, is that Douglas Leese introduced Jeffrey Epstein to people like Robert Maxwell, the father of Ghislaine Maxwell. I'll remind people, Robert Maxwell's Mossad code name was Mega. He received a state funeral in Israel. Okay, so are we all understanding this? Robert Maxwell himself was a very strange character. He changed his name many different times.
So did Leese, I think. So did Leese, I believe.
Oh, yeah. I mean, all of these guys are they're textbook intelligence operatives. And let's be clear here. They don't work for CIA. This is another big misconception, and also where the word games all come into play. Everyone says, oh, he worked for it. And he's former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett. Epstein never worked for Mossad. Well, what about worked with Mossad? That's actually a big question mark, right? And it's not Mossad, CIA. We know back in the 1980s when Epstein was just in his 20s, he was on a private plane with Douglas Leese actually to the Pentagon and was working on basically in the background with all of these various sketchy financial transactions, which are the beating heart of the American secret empire. And what I mean by that is you're probably old enough, Ryan, to remember Iran-Contra. A lot of people who are my age and others, I'm literally just going off of the reading, but that was, in retrospect, that kind of was the gateway to this entire shadowy financial system where the CIA and the US intelligence community circumvents US law by specifically financing different arms transactions and others, including running drugs, letting people get away with all kinds of crimes, all to fulfill something which was explicitly barred by US law and eventually comes out effectively at the direction of the White House of the United States. So that shows you how this can all be done. And it's through black money. Now, something I've tried to explain as well is that guys like Epstein, Douglas Leese, Robert Maxwell, Adnan Khashoggi, they're very important to this system. CIA does not open up a bank, at JP Morgan Chase that says CIA on it, right? That's not how this all works.
Right.
The analogy I use is, everybody's probably seen the movie Argo. It's a decent movie, but one of the plot lines in Argo is what? Is that they go to LA and they set up a front company. In one case, the guy actually puts up his own money and he gets recompensated on the back end, right? But so everything looks legit in terms of the paper trail. There have been multiple instances of this, if we look at other secret CIA operations, where people who are frontmen and who are able to front cash or help move cash or set up legitimate financial transactions and move things through the global financial system, they are integral to the intelligence operation. This is basically something I'm willing to go to the mat for that Epstein was involved in all the way from the 1980s, at the very least up until the mid-2000s.